1 year of hard work transformed me from broke to wealth. I used to sleep in my car, and that wasn't even the worst part. I still remember that night like it was yesterday. The air was cold enough to bite through my jacket, and I was hunched over in the driver's seat of my old, beaten-up sedan, trying to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, I could get a few hours of sleep before sunrise. I had nowhere else to go. My apartment lease was over, my bank account was laughably empty, and my pride, well, that had evaporated months ago. It all came crashing down faster than I could process. 1 month ago, I had a job, a girlfriend, and a plan, or so I thought. And now, I had none of that. Not even a place to call home. Sleeping in my car wasn't glamorous. It wasn't some edgy, young adult rebellion thing you see on TikTok or Instagram. It was cold, uncomfortable, and humiliating. Every bump in the road jolted me awake. Every passing car reminded me how invisible I had become. How did I get here? Looking back, it wasn't one thing that ruined me. It was a chain reaction of bad choices, toxic people, and my own laziness masked as confidence. I had blown my money on things that didn't matter, fancy dinners I couldn't afford, expensive gadgets I barely used, and clothes that looked better on Instagram than on me. I hung around people who smiled in my face and stabbed me in the back. My girlfriend at the time, let's call her Sarah. She wasn't evil or anything, but she was a constant reminder of what I wasn't: stable, secure, and enough. One night, I had come home after a long, fruitless day of trying to find a gig online. My bank account was at a level that made me nauseous, just checking it $2.34. Yeah, $2.34. I thought I could scrape by, but when I got back to my apartment, Sarah was packing her things. "Ethan, I can't do this anymore," she said, her voice almost too calm. I remember feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. "You don't have your life together, and I need stability." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her I could change, that I could fix this. But the truth was, I couldn't even fix myself. I had dug a hole, and she was done waiting for me to climb out. The next morning, I had no apartment, no girlfriend, and a bank account that might as well have been zero. I packed what little I owned into my car and drove aimlessly until I found a quiet parking lot where I could crash for the night. I remember staring up at the ceiling of the car and thinking, this is it. This is the lowest I'll ever go, right? But no, life had other plans. Over the next few days, I drifted through a haze of humiliation. I went to a coffee shop, pretending to work on my laptop, hoping no one would notice the wrinkled clothes and the desperation in my eyes. And then it happened. I ran into one of my old friends, a guy I'll call Jason. We had been close once, back in college. Or at least I thought we were. He saw me sitting in the coffee shop, looked me up and down, and laughed. Not quietly, not a chuckle. It was loud, cutting. The kind of laugh that makes your chest ache. "Ethan, is that your car you're living in now?" he asked, smirking. "Damn, man. Thought you'd be rich by now." I wanted to disappear. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch him. But instead, I nodded awkwardly, muttered something about tough times, and slinked out of the shop, my cheeks burning. That's when it hit me. This isn't just about money. This is about me, my choices, my life. And in that moment, I made a decision. I don't know where the clarity came from. Maybe desperation has that effect, but I decided right then that I was done being a loser. Done being broke. Done being humiliated. Done letting life happen to me instead of me happening to life. I went back to my car that night, curled up on the passenger seat, and wrote something down on a crumpled piece of paper. It was simple, brutally simple. 1 year, change everything. No half measures, no excuses. 1 year from now, I would be a different person, financially, physically, mentally, completely transformed. And it had to start tomorrow. The first step was small, almost laughable, a temp job at a delivery company. I didn't care that it was exhausting, that my hands ached, or that my feet were blistered. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of control over something. My schedule, my effort, my paycheck. At night, I'd park my car in the same quiet lot, pull out my laptop, and start learning. I dove into every free resource I could find online. Personal finance blogs, YouTube tutorials on freelancing, coding, even investing. My brain, which had felt fuzzy and useless for months, suddenly felt alive again. Every new skill I learned, every tiny bit of knowledge absorbed, was like a brick in the foundation of the person I wanted to become. Physically, I started walking long, exhausting walks to burn off the frustration and self-loathing. I didn't have money for a gym membership, but I had my body and I had determination. Push-ups, squats, jogging around the neighborhood until my legs burned. It was hard, miserable sometimes, but every drop of sweat felt like progress. And mentally, I started talking to myself differently. Instead of "I can't," it became "I will." Instead of "I'm broke," it became "I'm learning." It sounds cheesy now, but that little shift mattered more than I realized. It was like rewiring a circuit in my brain, one that had been fried by failure, rejection, and bad choices. The weeks blurred together. Some days I made no money. Some days my body ached so badly I thought I'd collapse. But the thing about rock bottom is that you can't fall further, so you only go forward. I realized that the humiliation of my old life wasn't something to run from. It was fuel. Every mockery, every glance of pity, every failure became a reason to push harder. And then something strange happened. One day, while delivering packages in the rain, I saw a kid struggling to carry a box into his apartment. It reminded me of myself struggling, exhausted, invisible. I helped him, and he thanked me genuinely. And in that tiny interaction, I felt a spark of pride, a feeling I hadn't had in months. I'm still capable. I can still matter. By the third month of my 1 year challenge, the transformation was subtle but undeniable. I wasn't rich yet, I wasn't confident yet, but I was moving. Every day had a purpose. Every effort had meaning. I was no longer a passive participant in my life. I was an active builder, even if the building was small and shaky. And that's when I realized something important. Rock bottom isn't a place. It isn't a car or a bank account or a broken relationship. Rock bottom is a wake-up call. It's the point where you have nothing left to lose and everything to gain if you're willing to fight. So I fought. I fought through exhaustion, through embarrassment, through self-doubt. I fought through the mockery of old friends and the lingering pain of rejection. Every night, as I lay in that car, I promised myself, you will not be here this time next year. You will rise. You will glow. And I meant it. The first real sign of progress came 6 months in. I landed a small freelance gig doing digital marketing for a local business. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't pay a lot, but it paid something. And for the first time in months, I could afford a proper meal, a shower, a bed in a cheap rented room. My car was no longer my home, but a tool, a stepping stone, not a prison. Looking back now, I can see that moment as a turning point. That small victory, tiny as it was, showed me that the year of hard work wasn't just a fantasy. It was real. And if this could happen once, it could happen again and again and again until the life I wanted wasn't just a dream, but a reality. By the end of that first chapter of my life, the chapter spent in humiliation, fear, and relentless struggle, I had learned the most important lesson. You are never truly broken until you stop trying. And I would never stop trying. Not again. The hardest part about changing your life, no one believes you're really doing it. I wish someone had told me that before I started. Because here's the truth. When you decide to climb out of rock bottom, everyone thinks it's temporary. They think it's a phase. They laugh at your spreadsheets, your early mornings, your strict meal prep. They don't see the hours you spend hunched over a laptop at 2 a.m., eyes burning, fingers raw from typing, just trying to figure out how to make this life work. And that's exactly where I was. After surviving the hell of living in my car and scraping together a temp job at the delivery company, I realized one thing. I couldn't survive on survival alone. I needed a plan, not some vague, I'll figure it out plan, but a structured, measurable, relentless plan. So I started grinding. Mornings began at 5 a.m. My alarm wasn't gentle. It was a jolt, a loud, obnoxious reminder that failure wasn't an option anymore. I'd throw on running shoes, I'd bought on clearance, lace them tight, and pound the pavement for an hour. Rain, snow, blazing sun didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was showing up. My body was sore, my lungs burned, but with every step, I felt a tiny bit of the old shame slipping away. Days were spent at a warehouse job, unloading boxes, stacking pallets, and doing all the grunt work I had once laughed at in others. I could have complained, I could have quit, but I didn't. I counted every hour as payment, not just in dollars, but in character. The work was brutal, the supervisors were impatient, and the other employees whispered about me, who's this new guy trying to do everything? They didn't know. They had no idea I was building a life while moving boxes. Nights were the real test. After 12 hours of labor, my body wanted to collapse. My brain screamed for sleep, but I opened my laptop anyway. I started learning skills nobody in my circle cared about. Digital marketing, freelancing, dropshipping, investing. I subscribed to free online courses, watched tutorial after tutorial on YouTube, and read ebooks that smelled faintly of printer ink and desperation. I took notes like a student who knew failing wasn't an option. I also started my first small side hustle. It was barely anything, helping local businesses set up Instagram ads, running small e-commerce experiments, testing cheap products with tiny ad budgets. It wasn't glamorous. Nobody believed in it. One night, I was at a friend's place or someone I used to call a friend trying to share my plan. He laughed. Bro, this dropshipping stuff? Scam. Digital marketing? Overrated. You're just wasting your time. And you know what? That sting hurt more than anything else because he was right, in the sense that I was inexperienced, fumbling, and making mistakes. But he was wrong in the sense that I was trying. That didn't matter to him. And that's when I realized the cold truth. The world doesn't clap for your grind. The world doesn't care. It's lonely. And that's exactly why you have to keep going. So I did. I started documenting everything. Every dollar earned, every workout completed, every hour spent learning. My journal became my accountability partner. I tracked my sleep, my energy, my spending. I recorded every failure, like the time I invested a tiny bit of money in a product ad that flopped spectacularly. I lost $40 in 5 minutes. I wanted to scream, cry, throw my laptop out the window, but then I remembered my car. My last year, the nights I cried with hunger and humiliation. Compared to that, $40 was a lesson, not a disaster. Progress was slow. In the first month, I barely made a profit. In the second, I had a few small wins. A client paid $50 for a social media gig. A product sold once online. a minor milestone that felt like climbing Everest. My body was changing too. Those morning runs and push-ups started showing results. My posture improved, my face cleared up, my confidence grew in ways money couldn't buy. But the mental grind, that was the hardest. There were nights I cried in my tiny apartment room, exhausted and lonely, questioning every decision. Why am I doing this? Will it ever work? Maybe I'm just fooling myself. The doubts were deafening. One evening, after a 12-hour warehouse shift and 4 hours of failed client pitches, I almost gave up. I shut my laptop, stared at the ceiling, and thought about quitting. Thought about going back to a life that was easier, even if it was sad and mediocre. Then I remembered the look on Jason's face at the coffee shop. I remembered Sarah's disappointed eyes. I remembered the nights in my car, shivering, humiliated, defeated. I remembered the promise I made to myself one year. That promise became my lifeline. If I gave up now, I'd be letting not just myself down, but the person I was trying to become. So I opened my laptop again. The next months were brutal. I learned to hustle smarter. Cold emails, better ad targeting, improving my copywriting. I made mistakes that cost money. I lost clients because I was inexperienced. I got scammed once by someone pretending to be a mentor. Each failure stung, but each failure taught me something I couldn't have learned otherwise. Slowly, my side hustle began generating consistent income. Not much, but enough to cover basic expenses and give me a taste of independence. I also started building routines. I blocked time for work, exercise, learning, and reflection. I meditated for 10 minutes every morning, not because I thought it was trendy, but because I needed clarity. I journaled every night, reflecting on wins, losses, and lessons. My body kept improving. My mind kept sharpening. And for the first time, I felt a sense of momentum, tiny at first, but undeniable. Some days, I'd pass by the same coffee shop where Jason had mocked me, and I felt a quiet satisfaction. Not arrogance, satisfaction. Satisfaction that I was actually doing the work. The hard, unseen work that nobody applauded. That's when I realized something important. No one will cheer for your grind, and most people won't even notice. But if you keep showing up, if you stay consistent, the results eventually notice you. By the time I hit the 6th month of my year-long challenge, the small victories started stacking. My first client paid me $300 for a freelance project. Another product I launched online sold 10 units in a week. My body looked sharper, my energy higher, my confidence tangible. And the best part, I felt unstoppable in a quiet, personal way. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building, improving, transforming. The grind wasn't glamorous. It wasn't fun. Most days, it was lonely, exhausting, and humbling. But that was the point. It stripped away the ego, the laziness, the illusions. What remained was raw discipline, relentless effort, and an unshakable belief in my future self. And for the first time since that night in my car, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Hope isn't loud. Hope doesn't come with applause. Hope comes from showing up when no one else believes in you. From putting in the hours, from refusing to quit when every part of you wants to collapse. And that, I realized, is how you start transforming not just your bank account, but your life. When I finally made my first $10,000 a month, I didn't feel rich, I felt free. That sentence might sound dramatic or like a flex, but it wasn't. Not at all. Because what it really meant was that I had finally stopped living under the weight of my old self, the broke, exhausted, humiliated version of me who used to sleep in his car. That version was gone, buried under months of sweat, late nights, failed experiments, and relentless effort. And the freedom, it wasn't in the money. It was in the fact that no one could make me feel small anymore. It all started with one small shift. By the 8th month of my year-long challenge, the side hustle I'd started out of desperation had begun to snowball. I was managing a few clients at once, running social media ads, optimizing campaigns, and even mentoring a couple of newbies who reminded me of myself 6 months ago. Every night, I checked the numbers with bated breath. Slowly, the pennies I earned turned into dollars, then hundreds, and then, shockingly, thousands. I still remember the first day it really clicked. I had 3 freelance clients paying me steadily, a dropshipping product finally gaining traction, and a small affiliate campaign that was making me passive income while I slept. I was sitting in my new apartment, the first real apartment I had rented since being kicked out, and I just stared at the screen. The total came up, $10,024, my first 5-digit month. And yet, I didn't feel rich. I felt alive. This wasn't just financial success. This was internal transformation. I realized that the real work wasn't in making money. It was in proving to myself that I could persist, that I could endure, that I could rebuild a life from scratch. The money was just the byproduct. The freedom was the reward. I started noticing the changes in myself beyond the bank account. I was healthier. My mornings still began with workouts, but now I could run longer, lift heavier, and move with confidence. I was more focused. 1 hour of deep work felt like an hour, not a blurry stretch of wasted time. I was smarter, not because of degrees or certificates, but because I had learned from my mistakes, tracked my progress, and constantly improved. And maybe most importantly, I was calmer. I didn't panic over setbacks. I didn't chase validation from friends, family, or exes. I had found something they hadn't: stability within myself. Speaking of exes, Sarah came back into the picture around this time. She sent a message one evening, casual, almost polite. Hey, saw some of your posts, looks like things are going well. Good for you. The first time I read it, a part of me wanted to respond defensively. Maybe brag a little, maybe let her know she had missed out. But I didn't. I smiled, closed the message, and thought, why would I need to prove anything to someone who walked away when things got hard? That was the moment I realized how far I had come. Emotional maturity wasn't about stoicism or suppressing feelings. It was about choosing where to invest your energy. I had nothing left to waste on people who didn't matter anymore. I also started cutting off toxic relationships from my past. Friends who had mocked me during my grind, who hadn't believed in me, who drained my energy rather than supporting me, I distanced myself. The process wasn't easy. Old habits die hard, and some connections felt comfortable even when they were harmful, but I reminded myself daily, comfort is the enemy of growth. At the same time, I learned to manage money properly. Early on, I had blown tiny wins on stupid gadgets and fast food binges. Now, every dollar had a purpose. I set aside emergency savings, invested in skills, and budgeted for essentials while still enjoying small rewards for my hard work. Money became a tool, not a source of validation. Not a weapon against the world, just a tool to build the life I wanted. And it wasn't just about me anymore. I started helping people in subtle ways, friends who were struggling, newbies in the freelancing world, even strangers online who asked questions. I shared tips, offered advice, and sometimes just listened. I realized that giving back didn't make me weaker, it made me stronger. Humility, I discovered, was the most underrated form of power. One of the most surreal moments was seeing Jason again, the guy who laughed at me in the coffee shop months ago. This time, I was walking past him on the street. He stopped, eyebrows raised, eyes wide. Ethan, wow, didn't expect this. You've really done well. For a second, I felt a flicker of the old satisfaction, the I told you so energy. But then I remembered the countless nights alone, the hours no one saw, the failures no one cheered for. I smiled politely, said thanks, and walked on. No gloating, no bitterness, just quiet confidence. That, more than the money or the success, felt powerful. By the 10th month, my life had completely shifted. My apartment was comfortable, not flashy. I cooked my own meals, ran, meditated, learned, worked, and built. I wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. I wasn't posting every achievement online. I wasn't chasing validation. I was simply thriving, and it felt incredible. Physically, I was in the best shape of my life. My face looked different, healthier, sharper, more awake. My posture was upright, my hands steady. My confidence wasn't loud or brash. It was quiet, calm, unshakable. People noticed the change, sure, but the most important change was internal. I had transformed my mindset from scarcity to abundance, from doubt to certainty, from fear to action. That month, when my first $10,000 came in, I didn't buy flashy clothes or a car. I bought a proper desk, a comfortable chair, and a whiteboard to plan the next year of growth. I celebrated quietly a steak dinner for myself, a run in the park, and a journal entry reflecting on how far I had come. I wrote, money isn't freedom, discipline is, knowledge is, persistence is, the money is just proof. I realized something important then. Success feels different when no one saw the struggle. Nobody clapped for the nights I cried alone, the days I worked while my body screamed, the failures I endured. And yet, those nights and days had shaped me more than any applause ever could. The victory wasn't in the money, it was in the persistence, the transformation, the glow up that wasn't just external, but internal. I also started thinking about the people I had once envied, colleagues, friends, classmates, not with bitterness, but with clarity. I realized that envy is wasted energy. Everyone's path is different, and the only competition that mattered was with the version of myself I was yesterday. Every day, I tried to be better than yesterday. That simple rule kept me grounded, focused, and happy. By the end of this chapter of my life, I had not only financial freedom, but emotional freedom. I had friends who supported me, clients who respected me, and a life that reflected my effort rather than my failures. I still worked hard, mornings, days, nights, but now it was sustainable, purposeful, and deeply fulfilling. And for the first time in my life, I felt true gratitude. Not for the money, not for the recognition, not for the milestones, but for the journey itself, the struggles, the lonely nights, the relentless grind that no one saw, but that had shaped me into someone I was proud to be. I had finally learned the secret. Wealth is temporary, but freedom is eternal. And the real glow up isn't just in your bank account. It's in your mindset, your choices, and the person you become while no one is watching. People said I changed, they were right. I finally became the person I needed years ago. It's funny the way life works. When you're down at the bottom, when you're broke, humiliated, and questioning your own existence, you don't realize you're planting the seeds for your future. I didn't. Not at first. All I knew was that I had made a promise to myself. 1 year and I would be different. 1 year and I would never feel the sting of failure like I had the night I slept in my car again. Now, sitting in my apartment, the one I finally furnished properly, not cheaply, not as a temporary fix. I look back on that year with a mixture of pride and disbelief. The transformation wasn't just about money. It wasn't about clients or products or how many followers I had online. It was about me, the person I had become while no one was watching, while no one clapped, while no one believed. That's the real glow up. I remember walking through my old neighborhood a few weeks ago. The streets that had once felt suffocating now felt familiar, nostalgic even. I passed the corner store where I used to buy instant noodles when I couldn't afford dinner. I walked past the park where I had sat for hours, feeling like life had betrayed me. And then I saw someone I hadn't expected, my childhood friend, Mia. She was sitting on the bench with her little brother, laughing. "Mia," I said, hesitating. She looked up, squinting against the sun. Recognition flickered across her face. "Ethan, is that you?" she asked, her tone a mix of shock and warmth. We hugged, a long, awkward, real hug. And in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't here for validation, but for perspective, to see how far I had come, not to prove it to anyone. She didn't need to tell me I had changed. I could feel it in the way I walked, in the confidence I carried, in the calm in my voice. I had changed, yes. But more importantly, I had grown into the person I had always wanted to be. I told her about my journey, about sleeping in my car, about the grind nobody saw, about the months I spent learning, failing, and rebuilding. I didn't embellish, I didn't flex, I just spoke the truth. And she listened. She didn't gasp, she didn't judge, she just nodded, smiling, because she understood. And I realized that was enough. That acknowledgement wasn't validation, it was shared humanity. Over that year, I had learned some key lessons that no motivational post or influencer could have taught me. First, self-worth is earned from within, not from money, status, or approval. Second, discipline isn't punishment, it's freedom. Third, forgiveness of others, of myself, of past mistakes isn't weakness, it's liberation. And finally, purpose is the real currency of life. Money will come if you focus on becoming valuable, but it's the purpose that sustains you when the world is silent. I reflected on the people who had doubted me, my ex, the friends who mocked me, the coworkers who laughed at my early hustle. Part of me wanted to feel bitterness, even revenge, but it wasn't worth it. Their doubts had already fueled me. Their disbelief had already driven me harder. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. I only needed to honor the work I had done and the person I had become. Physically, I had never felt better. My mornings were still filled with exercise, but it wasn't punishment anymore. I ran because I enjoyed the feeling of strength. I lifted because it reminded me that persistence produces tangible results. Mentally, I was sharper, calmer, more resilient. I didn't panic over setbacks. I didn't compare myself to others. I measured progress against my own yesterday, not someone else's highlight reel. One day, I visited the corner coffee shop where Jason had mocked me months ago. I didn't go to brag or confront him. I went for coffee, for nostalgia. He looked up when I walked in, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Ethan, wow," he said, hesitant. "You really changed." I smiled, nodded politely, and didn't say more, because I didn't need to. The change wasn't for him. It wasn't for anyone else. It was mine, and it was complete. I didn't need applause. I didn't need a recognition. I had achieved what mattered most: inner peace, resilience, and clarity of purpose. I also realized that the glow up wasn't just about myself. It was about how I could now influence others positively. I started mentoring young freelancers, helping them navigate the mistakes I had made. I donated to causes I believed in. I reached out to old friends who were struggling and offered guidance, not judgment. The power of transformation isn't just in accumulation, it's in contribution. Giving back felt better than any paycheck. By the end of that year, I had not just financial stability, I had emotional stability. I wasn't chasing anyone's approval, and I wasn't scared of failure anymore. I had rebuilt my identity from the ground up, reshaped my habits, and honed my mindset. I had learned that money was a tool, but character, discipline, and purpose were the real wealth. And the final, most profound realization: that glow up isn't measured by how flashy your life looks to others. It's measured by how comfortable you are in your own skin, how strong you are when no one is watching, how aligned your actions are with your values. That's the transformation that lasts. Sitting on my balcony now, watching the sunset over the city, I smiled to myself. People said I changed, they were right. But what they couldn't see, what no one could see, was the journey it took to get here. The nights of self-doubt, the early mornings, the lonely walks, the mistakes, the lessons, the sweat, the tears. That was the real story. I finally became the person I needed years ago. Not for anyone else, not to prove a point, not to impress, for me. And that, in the end, is what matters. Because the glow up isn't about money, it's about becoming whole. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100K subscribers by the end of this year, and we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.